Hey, Doug and Pat here with another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners. And today we're going to talk about what to look for when you're hiring. So, Doug, get us started.
All right. So I would say let's first get clear on what our hiring process is, and then we can figure out what we're looking for. So at a real high level, I think your hiring can be very simplified into 4 steps. Number one is you got to create the offer, right? Just like in marketing, there has to be an offer. So, and I'm not talking like the financial, here's your contract, here's your employment offer. I'm talking, why should I want to work for you, right? Just like we might write a page about joining our gym and why a client should join the gym and what the benefits are of joining the gym and the results they're going to get, yada. We want to have a strong offer for our job posting. So that would be certainly step number one. And then just like in the clients, that's going to generate hopefully some hand raises that say, hey, I'm interested, whether that's because you posted it on Indeed or you sent it out to your email list or whatever it may be. They read that offer and they raised their hand. Once you get your hand raises, my second step would be to do a phone interview. I'm a big fan of a phone interview, and this is where we can answer some of that. What do you look for when you're hiring? Little details with the phone interview that I think make a big difference. And we have to be empathetic and understand that, or be realistic and understand that, at least right now, and this obviously shifts throughout years, but right now we are very much, at least in my opinion, in an employee type market where the employees have lots of opportunities should they choose to go somewhere else. There are almost every place is hiring, right? So you're not the only one that they can take a job for. And so some of this is, I'm not saying you don't want to be picky, but you don't need to make them jump through like 17 hoops to get a job with you, right? Because they're just going to move on to the next one. But during that phone interview, things that I personally look for would be, first of all, I always ask them to call me during the phone interview, not call them, because I think that's a great sign of organization. So if your interview was at 10:30 in the morning, do they call you at 10:30 or do they call you at 10:35, right? It's preparedness and being on time is a big part of our business. And so if they can't be on time for a phone interview, it's probably a red flag. Other things that I'm looking for in that phone interview is, what's the energy? Can I kind of feel that smile through the phone? Because this business, I have a note here that says smile over skills, and it's the whole hire and smile, right? Like we focus a lot in this industry around the skills and the certifications. And to be frank, I really don't care about that stuff. Like it's like the least of my concern when I'm hiring somebody, because I know that's all teachable stuff, right? If I can find the right person that has the right personality and has the right charisma, has the right energy on the phone, and I want to be interested to meet this person, those are some of the things that I'm looking for over the phone. In regards to the other things would be, once that phone interview is done, I'm going to get them to show in person, right? That's that third step. And in person, again, same thing. I'm looking for timeliness and I'm looking for that energy. I'm looking for them to ask good questions, not just let me talk, but make sure that they ask good questions themselves. And then the final thing would be, of course, the fourth step would be the offer. So that, from a process standpoint, I've got some other notes here that I'll go through in a minute, but from a process standpoint, it's offer, phone interview, in person, and then the actual, hey, here's a job.
How long do your phone interviews typically take?
10 to 20 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah. Some of this is like, I think back when I first learned from others, and like I'm talking time frame, let's just say broadly a decade ago, when I first started hiring employees, I remember it was all about like, make them jump through a ton of hoops, right? Like the more hoops you can make them jump through, the better, because they're going to be quote qualified. And I think given the marketplace back then, and if I recall, it was like much more attractive, I think, to work in a gym, and there weren't as many training gyms around. So if they did want to not work in a health club, like you might have been the only option. Nowadays, like there's plenty of options for them. And so I'm not saying I want to like cheap out, but I don't want to waste your time. Like 10, 20 minutes, get to know you, good personality. I'm like very much similar to dating. Like I'm interested in the next step. If your gut tells you like, this person does not sound fun, this person does not give off any energy, then go to the next one.
Yeah, I think that what you just shared there is pretty critical because if anybody learned about hiring under really pre-pandemic circumstances, it was different. I mean, the landscape was different, and very much like advertising evolves or competition evolves. So you can't be using the 2015 playbook today and expect the same result. So I think that's a really important insight. So, what other tips and suggestions do you have?
So I'm a big fan with your people. Most of us, this is a stereotype, but in my experience, it's largely true, is most gym owners have a sports background, right? They played sports in school, are generally fans of that environment. And so if we think of the positions on your team as sports, in the sports world, I think it's really important. Like if you look at the good teams, they identify what gap they're trying to fill, and they realize that nobody is good at everything. So even as broad of a position as a coach, right? That would be the equivalent of like a sports team needing a wide receiver, right? There are all different types of wide receivers. There are ones that are better at running the go route and they're super fast. There are better ones that are more short and different skill sets, right? Even though they're both titled wide receiver. The coach is the same thing, right? So yes, I need to hire a coach. Okay, what kind of coach? Where can they fill the gap? I don't want them to be good, frankly, at things that either I'm already good at, or if I have another coach already on the team, how can I build this complementary structure? So an example would be, let's say that, and some of this is based on the avatar that you work on, but for example, let's say that you are very like outgoing and very personable. You're great with the relationship piece of it. And maybe you don't nerd out as much about the kind of the training geeky stuff, right? I personally would be looking for somebody that, sure, they need to have like a minimum, right? Like I don't want them to be a robot, but their strength may be like injuries. Maybe they're phenomenal working with clients that are injured. Or maybe they have a special interest in nutrition and that's kind of their jam. And you've always wanted to build out a nutrition arm to your business. Like, what is the gap across your team? What is the weakness across your team? Even if it's just you, think about like, okay, what am I good at that I can continue to do? And then what part of coaching or what personality type can complement this? We don't want a bunch of, at least in my opinion, you don't want a bunch of like yelling and rowdy people. You might have one person that's like that the clients that like that type of coach goes to them. And then you might have that coach that's really good with injuries, so they can work with the injured clients. So just like a sports team does, they don't try to build everybody to be the same. Get really clear on, okay, I know I need a coach, but what kind of coach do I need? What is the gap I'm trying to fill?
Yeah, I think that's part of the beauty of what we're doing in this industry, right? I mean, there's a very human element to it, and not everybody's going to be the same. Not everybody's going to be cookie cutter. And I think that for you to have the right culture, you have to go find the right personality types. And if you're running a gym serving the 50 plus crowd, that's probably a different personality type than if you're trying to have the high end or the high energy gym serving the 25 to 33 crowd. So no, I think that's a really profound insight there.
Yeah, another thing I would maybe marinate on is something else that I think is shift in this industry. And again, it could be our ecosystem. I try to be aware of that as well, but I do think it has spread really outside of the health club, aside from the health club world, is I don't think it's the employee's job to grow a business. And I think as owners in this industry, for some reason, when I first got into it, like trainers were expected to bring in leads, trainers were expected to get referrals, trainers were expected to build their own book of business. And although that is still a proven model in most commonly, say, the one-on-one world, like the private one-on-one world, for like what I would consider to be community-based gyms, like your small groups, your semi-private, your large groups, where you're trying to really build a community, not just this one-on-one relationship. I think it's really sometimes unfair is maybe the word I would use, to have an employee have the responsibility to grow the business. Like, that's awesome if they want to help you with it, right? And you can give them strategies like we would always role play with our coaches, how to ask for referrals, right? But we are the ones kind of, as the owner, leading that charge. We are the ones that are helping them and guiding them in that script. And then, sure, they have to execute on it. So they have to serve the business, right? Like, they're getting a paycheck. They need to do a job. They need to serve the business, service the clients, execute the playbook, run the plays. But I think there's a shift that's maybe happened or happening in that it's, I think, a bit unfair for an employee to be expected to grow the business because, frankly, they're not getting the upside that you would get if the business did grow. And so I think to tie that back to hiring, it's a reminder that I think we may be pushing some people away, not all people, but some applicants away if we're telling them in the interview process that they have this responsibility and, frankly, this stress of needing to grow the business.
Well, I believe, having dealt with business owners for 20 years at this point, I believe that really was paramount, largely because the people who own the gym didn't really want to be in like a business person, right? They just happened to want to train, but they took the ownership role because they didn't like working for somebody else. And so they just wanted to pass off the responsibilities for the things that they didn't enjoy. Now, ideally, if you're watching or listening in to wealthy gym owners, it's because you want to be an owner. You want to build a gym, create wealth, hopefully have an impact, and create a great environment for people to work too. But realistically, if you go to Chick-fil-A, the person working the drive-through isn't responsible for doing their marketing, right? But they certainly are responsible for creating an environment that helps you want to come back and helps you maybe even have a good enough experience that you want to spread the word about it. And I think that's largely what we can ask of employees at this point if we're talking about coaches, right? Now, that's different if you're hiring a general manager. That's different if you're a bigger operation, you're hiring a director of marketing. But if we're talking about coaches, I would say anything beyond facilitating some referrals probably goes past what is realistic to expect of them. And not only, I mean, I know you talked about fair, but just not effective, right? Like, it's not setting your business up to succeed by asking somebody to do something that, frankly, they're not going to thrive in. And if they were going to thrive in this, they'd probably be your competition, not your employee.
Yeah, great point. My final note here is, this sounds so silly that I had to put this down, but I've made this mistake, so I figured I'd share it. And it's like hiring 101, but let's make sure that we take the time. Let's say we have our person, we think we want to offer the job to them. Take the time to call their references. That is know that some references are okay. Yeah, I know they're going to say something good, but I think I can think of two distinct examples where once we called the references, they said some things that were nice about them, but then they also said some things, if you ask the right questions, as far as, again, go back to one of the first points I made, which is I'm not asking them about their skills. I'm asking them about, were they on time? How was their personality with other team members? Did they jive well with the team? Those kind of questions with references, as opposed to like, what do they do? Like, what kind of work did they do for you as far as skills? That's not what I'm trying to get out of it. But I think you'd be surprised. I know I was, when we called a couple references and they weren't that glowing. We could just tell they were like, yeah, they were all right. And we don't want all right if we're going to be pouring this much into a person. So just a final note, make sure we call those references.
Well, hopefully, as a listener of this podcast, you're in a position where you are hiring, you are scaling beyond yourself. So, I mean, I think this type of talk is something that, frankly, we need to have more of, because it's just something that, for you to get to where you want to be as a wealthy gym owner, this is almost a non-negotiable. So take these tips seriously, kind of go through that 4-step hiring process. Think about the things that kind of came up towards the end about calling references, about what we can actually expect of somebody and set them up to succeed with. And you're going to be more successful as an owner. You're going to be able to execute on your vision and build the type of business you want. So that's another episode of the Wealthy Gem Owners with everything you need to know about hiring. Signing off.